All right, I just finished these guys up, and instead of skipping to the end to see final results, here they are. This is maybe, I don't know, 15 centimeters away. So you got to think you're gonna be seeing them way back here, and it came out all right. When I was painting them, I hated myself. But things I think came out well was like I was really happy with the way the horse came out. The blue is okay. I was really disappointed in my metallics metal. I'm not good. The ingrain of the las rifles, trying to get those to just kind of mixed results. But overall, I think it was okay, and I just had to kind of push through it and hope for the best. I want to re-hit these guys, the Rough Riders. I don't know. I really feel like they're a unique unit. Anyways, I hope this helps you, and maybe if you like some of these elements, they'll help you. I guess we'll just jump into it. Bye. All right, so we got our Rough Riders. I'm gonna paint all my horses brown because I just want to save time. So anytime I do a batch, I'm just gonna paint all the horses the same way. And I got a dark brown. I'm using oak brown, and I don't think the brand really matters as long as you just kind of keep the themes, right? So we're gonna do some nice water down so we get some nice layers in there. We're gonna do some shading in a second, but I like to start kind of my second to last level of dark and work my way up. I just found that's the easiest way for me anyway. Everybody's a little different. Anyways, let's go ahead and paint your horses nice chestnut brown. And there you go. Our horses are looking kind of dark. That's okay. We're gonna add our shadow. And I got intense wood, which is a ink. But if you don't have that, you can always use like a darker brown, kind of glaze it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in here and kind of just glaze it down as if it's a glaze. Because their inks are transparent, so you can kind of get away with it. And so next time, I'm gonna go around the model. It takes about 30 minutes, not 30 minutes, it takes 30 seconds or so for it to dry. I'm gonna come in just a little bit more, right? So if I'm right here this time, I'm gonna drop it down just a hair to get all the shading. I want anywhere in here. And then we're gonna trim it up with some glazing at the end. So let's go ahead and get all the darker areas. So like just looking at this muscle right here, all along here, where it's gonna be a little bit darker, a little more intense. And just each time we're gonna go through. I'm gonna make about 5 passes. It's a little hard to see how light it is or dark it is. But there is a little part here that's dark. So what you're doing is that original brown you got, make it nice and thin. And you're just gonna maybe do 2 passes like this. Right, just going into the dark regions and just dragging it down. And that way, you don't have such a harsh transition between kind of this dark layer there. Hopefully it shows up. And you just kind of work it in. And depending on how much you thin it out and your experience, it's going to be a little bit of practice. But that's okay. You can always, if you're doing a squad, it doesn't matter. The one who you practice on first is the one that, he gets taken off the battlefield first. So no one ever knows. And there we go. We got a little bit of shading going on. It's going to start looking a little more when we get there. So I got some fur brown. I'm doing 4 fur brown to our darker brown. And we're going to go a little bit bigger than you want kind of the area to be. And the reason for that is you're going to see like a little bit of gradation there. And you're going to need to glaze it. So the glaze is going to kind of draw it back. So you just want to go a little bit over. Kind of get your little chestnut, right? And we'll clean it up. It's anywhere you feel like there's going to be a little more light hitting. So like down here, Light's not gonna be hitting as much, so we'll leave a little bit more open. And up here a little bit more. So at the top, we'll pretty much get the whole thing here, except for maybe a little bit right here to separate the muscles. So just kind of leave that little spot open. So now, anywhere you feel like it might have been too harsh, you're gonna take that original color, you're gonna thin it down, just keep putting water in it, keep mixing it, dab it on your paper towel until you get a nice kind of thin layer. And like here, I feel like it's too brash. I'm just gonna start with the lighter layer and just kind of glaze it in. And that way it's not as harsh for transition. You just kind of gotta play with it a little bit. Like I said, you know, you can always have a guy who, you know, someone's gotta get shot first, right? Just move it into that color. You should see less of a harsh transition between the two. Just keep checking to make sure you got everything you need. And do it each time you layer. You'll be all right. You can always paint over if there's a mistake. So now we just changed the ratio, and we're doing the same thing. So instead of 3 to 1, we're doing 2 to 1. And we're just gonna go inside. So like here, we're just gonna come inside where it was, right? And you can always leave a little space or go a little farther than you want, because you always clean it up, right? And just try to stick where the muscles are. So if you look at the horse's rump, like it's coming up here and it's starting to separate, so we want to start separating it as well. Everybody likes a good butt. Now we're just gonna do the 1 to 1, right? Same thing. I'm gonna put a little bit of a line there. Kind of help emphasize the belt. And just keep working it. And now I'm trying to stratify the muscles. And there you have your guy. I did go 1 layer lighter, just to kind of highlight some of these features up there. But I think it looks pretty good for a dark horse. And I find it's doing batches of 5, all the same color, it'd just be quicker. But now we're gonna do the undercoats. So anywhere you see underneath their cloaks or underneath the horse's cloak, I'm doing a half and half of desert yellow and skeleton bone to give myself kind of a lightish tone. And we're just gonna come in here, we're just gonna do a nice little little layer. I need to thin that paint out just a little bit, but that's okay. So we'll just work our way and get some nice little thin coat. It's gonna be a bit much because we did base coat with the brown or the black. So it's gonna be a bit much, but I believe this guy, like his cloak right there, is folded back, so we'll get that as well. And there we have it. Now I'm gonna take a little piece and mix it with intense chestnut, which is just like a darker. If you don't have it, you can always use your brown, just use less of it. And so you get kind of this look right there. And I want to make sure I dry it out a little bit. And I got some water in there. I just want to keep it just a little bit darker of an area. Right, anywhere I want a little bit of shadowing as it comes down. It takes about 30 seconds to dry, and I'll come back and I'll do a little bit more so it gets a little more intense. There you go. So now I've got, I've added in a little bit more, and I've blended a little bit, just like we did before. So I've added a little bit more of the lighter texture, and we're gonna do one more before we start mixing it with something even lighter. And we're just gonna try to get these more elevated regions. If you feel like this cut is not enough, once again, you can always just do the transition with some glazing. Just make sure you kind of leave a little gap. You'll be all right. And as for underneath the horse, since this is gonna be on the field, no one's gonna see those, and I'm not gonna paint them. And I went ahead and did one more little layer. And now I just have my light coat. We're just gonna come along, avoiding anywhere that's going down. So I wanna make sure you like hit this ridge, right where it's slightly elevated. And then after that, we're gonna mix it with mummy robes. And we're just gonna go right along this little edge right here. So we get a nice little subtle effect. So now I got my 50-50 mix of my lighter tan and that mummy robe. And I'm gonna come along here. I say a little too much on my paintbrush, but that's okay. I can glaze it in. And then before you start glazing, get the side of your brush and a little bit on there. Just try to get a little bit of an edge highlight there. Now that we're done with that, we're going to get the top of the coats, and I'm gonna use Wolf Gray, and we're just gonna come along and get all the guy, all the horse, right, all their cloaks. Just use the box art if you kind of get lost. And we'll get this all done. This will probably be the longest part of our entire painting process. So I decided that this was just a little bit too light of a color, and so I switched over to Dark Sky, which is just a really dark blue. So they're looking more like this now. So if you're following along, I guess stop what you're doing and restart. I'm sorry. But we're gonna keep that same color for our highlights. All right, so once you get that done, what I've done is just taken some black ink from like before, and I'm gonna just use it with the dark blue, and I'm gonna just pick some of the spots. Like here, I want it to be a little darker, so I'm just come in and make it a little darker, right? So I know right now it's gonna be a little large, but that's okay. I'm gonna glaze it back like we have been. So anywhere I want it a little darker, like if it's hiding in shadows, I'll come in there. The ink is a little bit of transparency, so you could, if you want to do a little bit less. I didn't put a foot on this guy. Anyways, if you could always add a little bit of water in there. I find it's okay to go a little wide, because like I said, you're gonna glaze back with that orange or the blue, and you'll be okay. So let's just get a little bit of outline here. So anywhere you want like some darker shadows, we're gonna put that in there. I also did paint that. Wow, I'm batting 1,000 today. I'm really doing well. It's okay now. One thing I will notice that the Army Painter blues are, I don't know, I've always had problems with, but I got a 4-to-1, 1 being the Wolf Gray, 4 being our Dark Sky. And I'm gonna come in here, and I'm gonna leave everywhere with the most deep recessed covered, and we're gonna go through and paint it nice and up. We're gonna get this lighter color in, and I'm gonna leave it kind of like darker down here where I got those shadows in. And just like we did with the horse, we're gonna glaze them up. Like I said, my Army Painter paints, I don't know if it's Army Painter or mine, but it's just, they don't cover well. But I got new blue paints coming, so hopefully that'll improve. And now I got 2-to-1 of my dark to light. And I'm leaving sections kind of open, right? So that way, as I glaze them in, I'll have a little bit more space there. I had to retouch up my stuff, that's why I'm a little different. Right, so like, if I leave this little gap there, I'll be able to kind of work it a little bit and make it smooth, or if it's right on top of each other, it'll be a little harsher. And for these smaller areas, it's okay if you just kind of, it's a little bit harsher of a transition. Now we're gonna half-half. We're gonna do 1 to 2 of dark to light, so your light's gonna be 2 parts. And I only want to hit the upper regions, anywhere that like the light would actually hit. So like up here, right? Like along his coat here. I'm only gonna get this part kind of on the inside and these edges. And then I'll just kind of glaze anywhere I think it's too rough. But anywhere that's like below where the light would be getting, so I just kind of look at it straight down and just ask myself, I don't want it. So like along here, I'm just gonna kind of get it a little bit like that and let it kind of glaze it in. And then I'll probably do one more, depends on you, and then we'll just do one final of edge highlighting with just the gray. All right, and now I have just my highlight color. I'll come along the edges right here, and I'm just using the gray. I'm just gonna mark it off like this. Trying to be as careful as I can. And if you want, you can always thin it down a little bit and try to get some of these areas here. Just try to get all these little edges. All right, so we got our model, and it looks okay. I don't know, I wasn't happy with the blue came out, but that's all right. You know, you live and learn. So now we're gonna do the leather. I'm actually using the leather equipment set from scale 75. And I'm gonna be doing the black leather first. And I'm just following along where the guide is. So I'm just gonna start getting all the darker leather here. And the trick is, if you forget one of these sections, you can just paint it in the lighter leather later. So I'm just gonna go through and get all these. And a pro tip, I should have done this, and I guess my next batch I will. I should not have put a mountain rider up there because it's getting really difficult to get in here and do details. But that's okay. You live and you learn. There we go, we got it all kind of laid out for us. It's dark because we are doing a black. Oh, and we're breaking the models, good. Now we're gonna grab 50-50 of crimson and black for our inks. Anywhere I want it to be a little bit darker, I'm just gonna come in here. It's gonna dry and be transparent. I'm not too worried about going over. Just anywhere I want it to be a little bit darker. So like down here, where it's underneath some shading, I'll recover those little lines. Down here where it's in the shadow, so I can always glaze it. Once it's done, I probably will glaze it. And you can do two, unless you're speed painting an army, just to get that transition a little bit better. And there we have it for the last grouping here. So I got a 1 to 2 of our dark to light, and I'm just going to try to get my lines inside. So it's real faint, and then also using the side of my brush where possible, try to get a nice edge highlight, and then maybe a little bit in the brightest sections. I have very little on my brush. I kind of like got a heavy glaze going. But yeah, just try to, best you can, get these edges. I finished the leather, and I was trying to figure out how to paint the metallics. I've been trying to do true metallics, and to be honest with you, it's all kind of shit. It's not great. I found the one that's the least terrible is if you just use the darkest metallic and you mix it with a little bit of ink, you can get a little bit of shading in there. But overall, I just don't think they come out very well. And I'm not the best painter, but I don't really feel comfortable explaining it because it's not great. With that said, I'll move on to the rest of the leather, and still haven't painted that. Still missing a foot. All right, we're gonna take this guy and we're gonna use a raw bronze primer, and we're gonna do all the rest of the leather that we didn't cover before, and just kind of get it. So, and anywhere you might have forgotten as well. Like if you just, oops, I forgot to paint that in the black leather, just go ahead and grab it now. No one will ever know. I'm gonna get these little stripes too, just to get a little bit of change up in there. I'm gonna be using crimson and, red crimson and primer to
get my shadows in. And I got a little bit of spots there, but that's okay because I'm gonna go back over with my primer to tidy up some of these shadows, right? And maybe glaze them in if they're really upset. If you want to add a little texture, you can kind of put a little slashes in there, and then always use some of the higher colors to give yourself like a little bit of like a cut into that leather. Oops, that's too much. That's okay, I'll tidy it up. All right, and just try to get some of like, here's an area that's so nice. It's like in the gun, and give a little bit of a slash right here. And then maybe like right here. I have a little bit in there, and I'm gonna go underneath here, add a little bit of shadows. And the gloves, I might get like the underside over here. That way it looks a little shadowy. Anywhere I see like little grooves, I'm gonna try to get in there. There we go, we got our shadows in there. So now I got 2 of our base layer and 1 of the desert yellow. And I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna start highlighting. So like along these edges, just do little slashes, just like we did with the last one. Kind of highlighted regions, show some of that worn leather. Right, just like along this book or bag up top. You can see my terrible mold lines. Just kind of chop it a little bit as we build up some of that texture. And maybe work down some of these little slash areas next to where the dark areas are, so we can have a little bit of like a cut leather or something. And there we go. So now I'm gonna 50-50. I think this is gonna be my last layer. I just want to give them tabletop quality. And some of these areas like this, I'm gonna give a nice highlight like that. Let me get a little water on my brush there. And then on the sides, or areas that might be like kind of worn away, like on the side here, I'll just see a little chops. So it's kind of worn a little bit, right? And just kind of help it pick out areas where it might be a little kind of torn away. And areas like this brush or bag or whatever, I'll just kind of put it on, and if I feel like I need it, I'll glaze it on. But I just need it tabletop quality. And what you'll end up with, something that looks a little bit like that. With that said, I'm gonna paint the copper myself. I'm just unhappy with how it looks, so I don't know, until I figure out true metals, I'll do that. All right, for our next set, we got 1 set of crusted sword with vampire red. And we're gonna do all our shading kind of at once. And this is for all the bits here. So like the shoulders, the top of the helmet, right? Well, that's where we're gonna do all the red. And I'm also gonna put the red right here on their collar, just to give them a little pop. And as always, thin down your paint, get some, you might have to put 2-3 layers in there, but it should be all right. And now that you have them, I got like a more watery, vampire red. I'm just gonna leave this dark part here alone. I'm gonna work my way up. And you can always do like a harder or a thicker at the top and less watery instead of glazing it up. That's what I'll do for like the inside here, where I'll just kind of tap it where I want it to be a little bit brighter along the edges here and at the top. And like back here, it's gonna be a little bit darker, so we'll just kind of glaze it up a little bit. And we'll just kind of keep working it until we get a little bit brighter of a color that's solid. So now I got a 1-to-1 of the vampire red and the dragon red. And I'm gonna start just as it did before, kind of move it up to the areas that would be catching the light. It's a little subtle, And we're gonna do this one more time with just the dragon, and then one of dragon red and a pure red. And then we'll outline it with, we'll see how that is, and we might just outline it with that pure red. And there we go, we got a little bit of shading in there, a little bit of highlighting, it should be okay. And now I realize that these aren't gonna be, you know, super great, so I'm just gonna make them tabletop quality. So we're gonna start with a little dungeon gray, which is kind of a, our uniform gray, which is kind of a medium dark. And we're gonna go ahead and base all the fur around the hooves. If you want to save yourself time, I guess you can paint the tail, but I'm just gonna go ahead and get all of these sections here that color, and then I'm gonna do some simple highlights. All right, and now I got 50-50 of my darkest gray of the ash gray, and I'm just gonna go along anywhere I think it's gonna be highlighted. I'm just gonna give it little cuts there to make it look like there's fur. And as I get lighter and lighter, I'll start using different brushes so it's a little more defined. All right, and then up here, we do the same kind of thing. We'll just work our model around like that. So there you go, I have it in there. I'm gonna do ash gray and spaceship exterior, and just one by themselves. I'm just gonna do it separately. So I'm gonna start with the ash gray first. I'm gonna use one of my finer brushes and just do little strokes. Because I mean, at this point, I'm just trying to go for tabletop quality. My vision did not turn out the way I wanted it, which is okay. So I just need to make it look like from this distance, you know, from like 3 feet away, like, do they look okay? And I think they'll look fine. So just go ahead and take 2 more lighter grays or a white and just work your way back up. And there you have it, they look all right. Now I got my darkest gray with this necromantic cloak. And I'm gonna come in and get all the dark regions. So I'm gonna get the hooves. I'm gonna come along and get their little knapsack here. Being careful not to hit anything else that I've gone over. Same thing with the cloak in the back and the tail. Oh, and the lance itself right here, the handle. And there we go, now I got 50-50 of uniform gray and that necromantic gray. This is the last time I use my big brush for this. I'm gonna try to get these little lines as much as I can. Trying to get the raised areas a little bit, trying to leave a little bit of shadow in there. And just kind of work that around these little pouches without hitting my previous. Well, I've lost the footage for the rest of the touches, but I just put a lighter one, and I forgot to hit record when I did these, but I don't know if I'm that happy about it. I tried a lighter wood and a darker wood, and all I did was I just painted it one and then put a lighter on it and inked it. I don't know if it's that good yet, but anyways, let's get started on power swords. So I got a dark turquoise, and I'm gonna go ahead and base coat this. I have to get rid of all that metallic I had on there from earlier. So I'm gonna get that turquoise on there. I'm gonna do the same thing with the cattle prod. I can't remember what that thing's called, but we're gonna do the same thing there. And now I've combined a little bit of violet with my turquoise. I'm just highlighting the areas I want to be a little darker. And I'm gonna go a little bit shorter than I think I need, because I'm gonna have to glaze it in there. And then for this, I just want to see if I can get it right inside. These little coils will be a little bit darker as we build the colors back up. And as we do this, we can always go back with our turquoise and work it back up. So now, I'm gonna keep adding water to my mixture. Dry it off until I get this nice little
glaze effect. Let's dry it off a little more. There we go. And I'm gonna come along here and then come up. We're just gonna keep doing that. And then once we're done building it, we're gonna go back once the other way. So I did that last time, and now I'm gonna do right there. And there you go. Now I got a 1-to-1 of my turquoise with royal cloak, which is a light turquoise. I'm just gonna hit along here in little jatted lines. And it's probably go a little shorter than you think you need, because we're gonna work it way back up as we glaze. And just like we did before, once you're happy, we're gonna glaze it up so it's a nice bright. As for this part, let's just go ahead and just hit kind of all the ridges of this little cattle prod. And for our last bit, we're just gonna get that light turquoise by itself and just kind of make the little chops here for the shiniest parts of the blade. And try to just be gentle as you can and get that little edge highlight. Mix a little bit of white with my light turquoise. I just put a little bit in here, the little tips. And anywhere I want a little extra brightness, I'll just dab it in. And that's it. That's his little sword. I guess it looks all right from that distance. Let's finish off the details. So I got elf green, which is just kind of like an army camo green. And I'm gonna go over all these grenades and other pieces of equipment, and we're gonna build them up with that kind of army drab, like these canteens. And we'll build those up and we'll almost be done. There we go. And now I got a little bit of that elf green. I'm mixing it 2-to-1 with, oh no, I lost it. Where'd it go? Oh wow. The chromatic flesh is just kind of a lighter green. And I'm just gonna tap all the little grenades, little pineapple grenades that aren't used anymore. And then like little edge highlights here. They're so small that I don't know if I really need to do more. I'm gonna do one more. And with the next layer, we're just gonna do the necromantic by itself. And we're just gonna try to like tap the little areas. And if you can, try to get the little edges of these little squares. With that, we'll be done and we'll do the hair. So I got leather brown cobalt skin, and I'm mixing them together to get a little bit of a tan in there. And all right, my son's running around in his underwear. That's good. It's always helpful when you're painting. Anyways, I'm just gonna go around and get this fur. Probably have to do 2 coats because it is pretty bumpy. If you're having trouble getting in the dark, you can probably hit it with a wash. Now I just have my little cobalt and a lighter tan that you're using, and I'm just gonna tidy up all the little ridges and these little dots. With that, I just gotta clean up my miniatures and do a couple small details. Faces are too small, and I really should have done this separate for me to be able to draw their faces for anyone to see. But hopefully, it'll help you. On top, I'll give it little lines.